Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. Chantel, thank you so much for being here on the Craft to Career podcast. I have to admit, I have my quilt pattern writing course right now, and one of my students, we did like a little mood board, and hers was just so on point. And I was just so impressed. I'm like, you seem very dialed in, you know, all these things. And she told me about you. She was like, I've been working with Chantel. You should have her on the podcast. And I've seen the proof is in the pudding. You're doing some real things. So briefly, can you tell us like who you are and what you do? And then we'll really dive in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I adore your student who had you on. She's one of my favorite humans in the world. Yeah. So I am the founder of Strategy Square, which is a coaching, basically business and marketing coaching business that I've started after years in the marketing agency world and providing digital marketing services for entrepreneurs. I just kind of identified this gap that a lot of these business owners have a ton of passion and not a lot of know-how in running a business and what it means to market yourself and building a healthy, thriving business. And so I wanted to provide some help for them and help them get caught up rather than having to do years and years of learning on the fly and the hard way. Like, let's just cut through the noise and get really clear on how to build these things properly so that they can support you and your dreams and your passions.
Yeah. So I'm very curious, what are some of the number one things that you see happening with business owners where they're really shooting themselves in the foot, you know, like these problems that you're talking about?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things, and I've been there and done this myself. I used to own my own small business. It's kind of what got me started on this journey into marketing and entrepreneurship and all of the things. But what we tend to do is we have a lot of passion behind whatever it is, whether it's our craft or our practice or something that we're teaching or whatever it is that we're doing. We have enough passion to get started and to make that leap into entrepreneurship. So you have to have like a pretty high level of passion to do that in and of itself. There's a lot of fear around that. There's a lot of risk you're taking. So to make that leap, you have a ton of passion. But then I think there's this mindset block that a lot of business owners, I see it again and again and again, honestly. Entrepreneurs, we get in our own way. We start to think that if we reach out for help, if we admit that we don't understand how to do something, or if we admit that there's something that's challenging us in our business, it's somehow a expression or a manifestation that we're not an expert in what we're doing, that we're not good enough to be doing whatever it is that our passion has led us to do. And that's just not the truth. So honestly, that mindset is the biggest roadblock I see. And it can come up in the beginning. It can come up when you're 5 years into business. It can come up when you're 20 years into business. It comes up again and again and again. And I think it is always behind business failure. 100% of the time, you can tie business failure into that mindset that we develop inside our own little brains.
Mm-hmm. And so when you work with someone, how do you work on that? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because the approach is going to be different. What's going to resonate for somebody is going to be different for everyone that we work with. So the best way that I have found to approach that and to help them through that is to kind of, I don't want to say ignore it. You don't want to ignore it, but we don't like start by attacking that head on. I've developed this program that I work people through that has key steps throughout it where we're kind of giving them baby doses, baby bites of little things to help them recognize one small part of that mindset issue and to overcome them one at a time, instead of saying like, hey, you're living in fear, you're freaking out, you're making bad decisions because of that fear. And now you're starting to tell yourself this narrative that you can't do it, that you're not qualified, that you're not capable, that you're not smart enough, all these negative things. When really, if I approach it that way, it's going to shut them down. They're going to panic. They're going to freak out. They're going to be like, yes, that's what I'm doing. And here, they'll start dwelling on that. But if we start from a place of, what do you want in your life? What's most important to you? Nothing to do with your business, and help them focus on those and fuel their passion for the life they want to live, and then kind of show them how to connect their business and other things into it. That's how we can start addressing those deep mindset issues in a roundabout way. And then when we do face them head on, it's not so overwhelming.
I am curious. So, because I've, before having you on the show, I listened to you being a guest on another podcast talking about this. Do you find that when people kind of step back and very, very first, they're like, what do I want my life and my business to look like? Is there a pretty big disconnect? And by that, do I mean like, for me, for example, like I want my business to look like I'm able to work whenever I want, but I have meaningful connections with people. And then if I look at the reality, like, I look at like, oh, well, this person's saying you need to make reels all the time, so I'm making reels all the time. And then there's just a big disconnect. Do you see that happening a lot?
Yes. And I think that's getting worse with this modern age of technology. We have hundreds of people in every direction telling us what we should be doing in our business, tell us what we should be doing in our lives, tell us what we should be doing to take care of ourselves. And so like, there is so much noise just buzzing around our heads all the time. And what it's causing is overwhelm. The human brain, I mean, when we talk about like neuroplasticity and talk about these things on a neurological level, your brain is not capable of processing as much information as is being thrown at you every single day. And so no wonder we are completely overwhelmed. Like, yeah, oh, I need to be posting more reels. Oh, I should be doing this and that in my marketing. Oh, I also need to refine this, process in my product development or get better at this skill. There are so many things, so many voices coming at us that tell us that we're not enough. And so that's the big thing, is like the overwhelm that everyone has. And what you said, when I think of what I want my business to be, the first thing you mentioned is I will have more time.
Yep.
I cannot tell you how many people that is. I mean, I can guarantee when I sit down with somebody that is the first thing as we're working through this, like, what do you want your life to look like? It always comes down to, I want more time, more free time. I want to live my life on my terms. And the reality of owning a business is there's going to be some element of hustle. But if you stay and live in that place, you're going to burn out 100% of the time. And so we got to find the balance, and we work through that. But we also help people understand, like, you don't have to do all the things that everybody's telling you to do. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck on, is they hear all the things they're supposed to be doing. And I am convinced that all of this noise around us are people that have a lot of passion, and their passion is rooted in sharing what's worked for them. These things all work, but you don't need to do all the things for your business. So you got to take that time to pause and figure out exactly what you really need to be doing in your business.
Yeah. So I actually am one of the few that enjoys doing reels on Instagram. I know it's weird, but I have a friend right now who she's been doing reels and she has a good following and it's going well, but she's like, it's been taking a dip recently. And she recently heard someone talk about Pinterest and how amazing that is. She's like, so I want to go and do Pinterest. And my initial reaction is like, you're starting from scratch all over again. Like you have this thing that has been working. And if you just jump ship because it's not working as well as it has been, you're going to have the same issue over at Pinterest. I don't know. What are your thoughts? You have much more experience in that area than I do.
So what you're kind of outlining is a really common pattern that we see where people start seeing that things aren't working how they want to. And so their automatic thought is like, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. Okay. The go-to is I need to do more. And you mentioned the reels aren't doing, I'm like, oh, well, that's because there was a massive algorithm update August 1st, and it totally changed the game. Since 2020, we've had reels have been the number one resource on Instagram for getting reach, getting you in front of more people to get more views. And this update that they did kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. So you're actually seeing, carousel posts and static feed posts are actually getting more equal coverage. So that's like a little behind the scenes what's happening there. So it's not in her head. The reels are like the algorithm took some of that importance off of it. But what I would say is, if you're in, like, know your audience. Where is your audience spending their time? And instead of saying like, I need to go all in and do all this different stuff in all these different areas, what's your audience like on Instagram? Is your audience there? Are they engaging with you? Are they connecting with you? Don't bail ship on the platforms where your audience is. But if you do some research into your audience and figure out, okay, where are they spending their time? And you find that they are spending a lot of their time on Pinterest, and maybe that they're using Pinterest as a source for inspiration and creative guidance or whatever, and in whatever they're doing, and you can meet them in their journey of that while they're on Pinterest, then yes, you should absolutely be on Pinterest. But the answer isn't in what is everybody telling me I should be doing? The answer is in what is my audience telling me I should be doing? And that's where they need to spend time.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So my audience and most of the people in my listenership or whatever, it's quilting, fabric, sewing, crafting. So you can find an audience on Pinterest. You can find an audience on YouTube. You can find them on Instagram, and then you can find them on Facebook, just depending demographics. So that right there is overwhelming. It's like, well, they're on all of them, So then is it then like, well, which one do you want to do? Which, they're all going to have pluses and minuses.
So a lot of this is usually the process of slowing down just enough to understand where the best place is for you to spend your time. Because you don't want to do more. You don't want to take on more. You want to do what's working, and you want to double down on what's working. So, for example, my mom she owns a thriving Etsy shop. Like, she's one of the top Etsy shop sellers. She's been doing it for years. I actually got started in working. I was, stay-at-home mom and just wanted to do something around my kids' nap schedule. So I actually, for years, crocheted baby hats for her.
Oh, no way.
During the baby hat trend. And even to this day, one of her top selling products are these crocheted baby costumes. And she's just, crushing it, one of the top sellers on Etsy. And one of my biggest frustrations in helping her in her business has been she gets so bogged down in her business with, she gets overrun with orders, and then she's filling these orders. Everything's handmade. So she's spending a lot of time. And over and over again, we hear from her, I'll do that after this rush, or I'll do that after. She doesn't take the time to slow down and focus on where to spend her limited amount of time that she can give to this. And I'm working with a client right now where we broke down, you just break down the numbers, you do the math. And I kind of helped her see, okay, you're on Amazon, you're on Etsy, we're looking into Shopify. And we ran the numbers, where is the best platform for you to put your focus What's going to give you the best return on your investment? Which one are you going to get the highest cut from? And we literally did some math equations, and just, it's clear as day when you take the time to do the math. And the same can be said when exploring your platforms. Like, where should I be spending my time? You have to take that time. You have to pause and take the time to put in the thought and put in the research and find the answers. They're there, but most people either don't know how to find them, or don't know, or don't have the time, or think they have the time to stop and do the research and put in that work. And that's the difference between a really high level of overwhelm and just feeling like I don't even know where I should be focusing or where to go next or what to do, and having a complete confidence in knowing this is exactly where my audience is. This is exactly what I'll get out of this. And yes, I might be starting over and doing something completely new, but it's going to be worth it because I know where they're at and how to meet them there. So it's just pausing, taking the time.
Do you go and look at like where your sales are coming from, or like how many followers you have? Followers probably, I don't know. Yeah. What are some of the metrics that you look at?
So what I always tell people is success leaves clues. Now, you need to start with looking at your own success. Where have you seen success in the past? Where have you been able to drum up a lot of eyeballs on your content or a lot of sales? Like, you know, there's metrics on your back end that show you where traffic is coming from. That's going to give you some clues. But then there's also, you know, understanding those metrics. If you're looking at, okay, on YouTube, for example, if there's a traffic source, you can, you know, you kind of look at your content and you can see all the traffic that is coming in. And one just says external traffic. And if you click on that, it will expound and you'll be able to see like, here are my top sources of external traffic. And if you see Pinterest, or if you see Instagram or Facebook or one of these platforms that you're like, hey, I can have a presence there coming in at the top, you know, in the top 5 or so of your external traffic sources, that's a clue. Okay, I'm already getting traffic from Facebook. What can I do to double down on that? So you want to look at your own clues for success. And then we get to do the competitor analysis, which is a little bit harder, but there's so many clues sprinkled in there. And that's something I guide people through because it is a whole process. Like, we have to identify your competitors, and then you want to, you know, identify where they're active, what platforms they're present on, and what are they doing on those platforms, and do they have a funnel in place, and all this stuff that gets really overwhelming because there's a lot to it. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You just, sometimes all you need is somebody to like take your hand and say, hold on, I know this is overwhelming. And it's overwhelming because you're trying to do it alone and you've never done this before. I got you. Let's walk through this together. You don't have to do it alone. And that's kind of, again, success leaves clues. So you got to go looking for the clues. It's the same idea as pausing and taking the time to figure out where you should be, you know, improving or spending more time or whatever, but also pausing and taking the time to study and figure out where those clues are. Find the clues because they will guide you.
Well, and I'm curious because, and I've experienced this myself, where when I work with a mentor, which now I feel like I'll be a lifer of having somebody that I hire at all times to like mentor, guide, whether it's a life coach, therapist, business, whatever, they're, you know, just someone to help with that. There's something that's very lonely about entrepreneurship, and we can get really bogged down, and it's just very isolating.
One of my clients right now is a coach, and she says all the time, coaches need coaches. Mm-hmm. And it's because of that piece right there. Entrepreneurship is lonely. And when we stay and we sit in our own little space and we keep to ourselves and we're trying to figure everything out on our own, is there a more lonely and isolating pattern of behavior than to just isolate yourself and say, like, I can't reach out, I can't ask for help, it's going to make people think that I'm a failure? No, like, when you look at the people that are at the top of any industry, they're collaborating. They are not pushing people away. They're inviting people. They're surrounding themselves with people that have a similar mindset as their own. They're surrounding themselves with people that are successful because they want to be successful. They're saying, hey, I need some help here. What's your experience with this? What have you done? They're asking the questions. And I think, especially as we're new to entrepreneurship, I've been there. Like I learned this by doing it completely the wrong way. My first go around. I learned it all the hard way. But we sit in our corner and we just say like, we can't ask for help because then people are going to know that we don't know what we're doing. And that would be the worst thing in the world. Would it really be the worst thing in the world if people know that you don't know what you're doing? Everybody wants to feel needed. So if you reach out to somebody and ask them for help, they're not going to be like, I can't believe you started a business and you have no clue how to do this. No, they're going to be like, oh, I totally know how to do that. Let me help you. And let me tell you, this is what I did. Try this, try that, try this. And you got to be careful because to an extent that's where we get the 100 voices coming at us. But you kind of like trust your gut. You're going to be guided to the people that can help you. You're going to be drawn to them because you know that they are where you want to be. And so follow that gut, follow that pull that you're feeling and reach out to them. Like if you are consuming their content because you know that they understand this thing that you're struggling with, ask the questions, reach out, do that vulnerable thing and make yourself be seen and known to that person because they're going to want to help you. You just have to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. And I'm curious, there are different masterminds that I have actually like applied to or thought about applying to. And then I just didn't because I guess it's leaning into that. But I feel like some mentors can really go all in on like the hustle culture and like,
yes,
I don't know. So what are some tips that you have for finding a mentor, a good mentor?
I think it really does come down to that intuition piece. And I think we tend to have another client of mine really leans into this like growth and intuition and connecting with yourself. And I love her content and I adore her. And she serves me as I'm helping her because she's teaching me a lot about this. But you always know, you mentioned like there's a coach that really leans into the hustle culture. And if that feels like, no, that's not what I want for my life, don't go with that mentor. Pay attention to what little voices are what thoughts are popping into your head. How does that feel when they say you're going to do this, you're going to set this insane morning routine where you wake up at 5 a.m. and you do all these things before 10 a.m. Like, does that feel good to you? And if it doesn't, that's not the mentor for you. And sometimes we feel really good about a mentor and we go all in and we start implementing what they teach us. And that's when we find out that it's not for us. Sometimes the only way that we learn is by trying it out for ourselves and be like, And that's okay too. That's part of this growth process. Like we get to try for ourselves and find out what feels aligned for us. But I think the best piece of advice is look for a mentor that is going to support you where you're at. They meet you where you're at. They're not going to say, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. So you're not, you've got a lot of work to you're going to have to make these massive changes. If they're asking you to come from here to here, you're going to feel the overwhelm of that. But if they're coming and meeting you here and asking you to take a little step, that's going to feel way more manageable for you than making a huge leap. So just kind of pay attention to what they're seeing. And again, you're going to be drawn to them, but think about how would that really look if I were to make that massive shift and start waking up at 5 when I'm usually one that likes to, I'm not a morning person. Am I going to be able to do this 5 a.m. thing? Does that really feel like that's being true to myself and I'm going to feel fulfilled in that? Or does that feel like I'm going to be abandoning myself and telling myself that I'm not good enough? Pay attention to those things. So,
yeah, because I have in the past, joined a group because of pride. Like it was a very exclusive, expensive group. And I heard people like, I don't know that you'll fit. And I was like, oh, I will fit. And I joined and it was the worst, I was like, it wasn't a good fit, surprise, surprise. So, But you learn as you go. I am curious if you could share with us, I know you started a Pilates studio, if you'll tell us kind of what happened with that and what you learned.
Yeah. So I actually, I think our whole journey into entrepreneurship and through life in general is very much guided based on our circumstances. And so at the time, I was going through some infertility and I needed a distraction from that. It was consuming me. I was sad all the time. And I knew that I needed to occupy my mind with something else. So I got really into fitness and, I joined a gym and I discovered bar and Pilates classes. And they gave me this focus of like, oh, I can get stronger and I want to do more at this. I've always been into fitness anyway. So anyway, but this was just a new introduction into this new world and I was obsessed. And so I sought out this instructor and found out how she got certified and went through the certification process and started teaching at her studio that she had opened and taught there for a while. And then she shut her studio down. And I was still in the throngs of this. I was past the infertility at that point. I think I actually had just had a baby. So I opened a Pilates studio when my newborn was 6 weeks old. Because I know, because of the timing of her shutting her studio down. And there was this opportunity. There was an opportunity to jump on all these clientele that were looking for a new Pilates studio. And so I seized the opportunity. I hit the ground running hard with a 6-week-old, opened a studio, and it because I saw the opportunity, it did well. It took off and it was doing okay. And I kept it running for 2 years. And over the course of 2 years, you get really aware of your weak spots. Mm-hmm. And mine was marketing. I knew that I needed to be doing it, but because of how I started that studio, I wasn't desperate to figure the marketing out. I had these clients that were just there and ready for me. And so I just kind of let it, run. Mm-hmm. It just kind of stayed at the same level. And there was never a thought of like, let's scale it. Let's do more with it. Like of course I was always trying to do more with it, but I wasn't diving in on the marketing to really help it grow and scale. And then there came this time that it was like a perfect storm. It was a perfect storm. We had moved across town. So the Pilates studio was no longer just 5 minutes down the street from me. It was now a 40-minute drive one way to get to where that studio was located. So that was a lot more on me. Now, at this point, I had hired other instructors, and my main instructor that was teaching most of my classes was moving to Europe. I live in Colorado Springs. We have a very heavy military influence here. And so her spouse was moving to Europe and she was going with him. So now over half of the classes I needed to take on myself. And my lease in my space was coming up, and I was finding that their schedule, the open availability of that space wasn't meeting the needs of my clientele. So there was just a lot of factors that were playing into this. And so I needed to find a new lease. I needed to hire a new employee. I was now commuting way across town, and I didn't want to move the studio away from my client base to be closer to me. There were a lot of factors. On top of that, my marketing, I was really overwhelmed with it. And the finances were just like breaking even. So I felt like I was doing a ton of work and making no money for myself. It was just literally to sustain the studio. Perfect storm. Now, each and every one of those challenges I could have overcome if my mindset was in a better place. If my passion for this helping people really was in a better place. But my mindset, I was operating from a place of overwhelm, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I shut it down. And as I shut it down, it was actually crazy. I have this clear memory of pulling the door shut on the studio for the last time and kind of just facing that fear of failure, like that this is it. I've officially failed. And it like switched. It transformed inside of me. That fear of failure transformed into this like drive to be like, at the time I was blaming that failure for my marketing. I was like, this would have done so much, everything I wanted it to do if I understood marketing more. So that fear of failure transformed into a absolute obsession with marketing. And I had to figure out how to do this marketing stuff. And so I went all in on like master classes and workshops and summits and all the things. Plus I finished my degree and I like had to prove to myself that I was capable of overcoming this thing that shut me down.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how this Pilates studio turned into this marketing obsession, which then turned into a career at a large marketing agency in California. And, you know, it's just been interesting to see my journey progress from a Pilates studio into coaching entrepreneurs in business and marketing strategy today. Like, it was all rooted in that Pilates studio, but you just follow that thread of passion,
Mm-hmm.
that thread of sometimes it's your failures that are going to push you into a new area. And sometimes it's your successes. And I've seen both. You know, my failure in the Pilates studio pushed me into marketing, and my thriving and my understanding of marketing in that large marketing agency actually drove me away from the agency and drove me into opening my own agency and starting my own coaching, because I identified that gap where these large agencies are just kind of treating entrepreneurs like a number. Like, the entrepreneurs are coming to them saying, hey, I don't know how to do the marketing. Will you just do it for me? And they're like, sure, here's exactly what we'll do. Well, they don't know enough about marketing to know that that in and of itself isn't going to be enough. It's so much more intricate than that and integrated. So they're like, sure, that sounds good. And then it's like the agencies know, like, we're going to keep them for 6 months. That's about as long as they're going to be willing to stick around. And then they're going to bail and we'll replace them with somebody new. And that didn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I left. And I was like, they need to understand this. These entrepreneurs need to understand that marketing and what it really takes, that there are levels and layers and not any one thing by itself is going to be enough, and help them build that properly so that when they do hire somebody to do it for them, the systems are in place and they'll know what to be watching for to make sure that it's actually going to work. And that's my journey from owning my own studio to where I am at today as a coach has been very much guided through my own experiences, but also through working with so many entrepreneurs where I've seen this cycle again and again and again. If you're overwhelmed in your marketing, if you're overwhelmed in your business management, you're not alone. Like, that's part of the deal of being an entrepreneur. We all feel that, every single one. I don't care how successful of an entrepreneur you are. We all face the moments of overwhelm. And the important thing is, again, taking that pause, stepping back and thinking it through and being, putting in place systems and strategies that are going to help you know what to be watching for, identifying those key performance metrics, which are different for every business. And then having that knowledge in place, which will give you the confidence, which will fix your mindset, which will help you overcome any challenges that arise. Like, it's all integrated. And so if you're trying to do just one piece and you're ignoring that integration, yeah, it's going to struggle and you're going to feel overwhelmed and it might fail.
I'm curious. Okay. So this company that you work for in California, and I wrote down some questions so I don't forget them, but did you work from far away? Like, what am I trying to say?
Yeah.
Distantly. What's the word?
Remotely.
Thank you. Remotely.
Remotely. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I did. I've stayed here in Colorado and worked for them in California.
Okay.
So
I wondered, because in my mind, I'm like, did you move to California? I thought you had the Pilates studio in California, but okay. You've always been in Colorado.
No. Always here in Colorado. Been here for a long time.
Okay. And then I'm curious, I see with myself included, there's this repeat overwhelm where, and I see it with so many people, but like, they burn out. And so then they throw everything away and start something new, and then they burn out again. But because the issue is we, myself included, have not learned how to do things effectively. And so it's just repeating the cycle over and over again. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, you bring up the point that we're cyclical. As human beings, we are cyclical. And I mean, this is what you bring up is applicable in like trauma. It's applicable in coping. It's applicable like in our emotional and mental state, but it's also applicable in our state as entrepreneurs and business owners. It's applicable in our relationships. If we don't get to the root cause, we are going to continue that cycle until we identify the root cause, which is, remember, I closed my studio thinking that I failed in that because of my marketing. I now understand that all of the challenges that I faced when I made the decision to shut my studio down were not because of marketing. They weren't because of finances. For a while, I was like, oh, it's all marketing. Figured out marketing. And as I figured out marketing, I realized, oh, it was never marketing. It wasn't that. So then I said, oh, it was finances. But then I got looking at it. And when I'm honest with myself, the finances were not that bad. They were like, the studio was sustaining itself. It was doing fine financially. But what I realized is what it was all rooted in was my mindset as a business owner. And so be patient with yourself when you do kind of repeat these cycles, because every time you cycle through, it's going to scrape a layer off the top and you're going to get deeper. So don't get frustrated if you find yourself coming back to the same issue again and again and again, because every cycle is going to get you closer to that root cause. But if you want to avoid the struggle, like, pay attention to the mindset, like, understand what's the cause of the overwhelm. And the overwhelm is a mindset issue. So it's the need to believe in yourself and to understand, again, connecting to your why. If you build something on your why, it's like the most sure and solid foundation that you can build your business and your habits and your routines and your life on, is that why. Because the second you get, misaligned with your why, you're going to feel that misalignment. And that's when the overwhelm comes in. Anytime you're misaligned with your why, you feel overwhelmed.
Ooh, that's a good point.
When we work in my coaching program, day one, I started a new client yesterday, a one-on-one client yesterday. Day one, we start with your why. What, and I say, this has to have nothing to do with your business. Your why should not have anything to do with your business. So if you're saying, I started this business and my why is because I want to help people build better. Like, on the surface, my why looks like I want to help entrepreneurs feel confident in their business. That's not my why. My why has nothing to do with that. But by understanding my why, what I do in my business supports my completely unrelated why. And that's when the alignment comes into place. And so as long as you're feeling aligned, you're not going to feel overwhelmed.
So what is this is very personal, but do you mind sharing what your why is?
Yeah, it is very personal. And if your why is not, if it doesn't feel too personal to share, then you haven't gone deep enough. That's one of the things that I teach in my discovering our why. And I'm happy to share mine. Mine is very rooted in my relationship with Jesus Christ and my Savior. And so my why, and it can feel out there and completely, again, unrelated to anything business-wise. But I say my why is I know my Savior and he knows me. Like, how is that a why? That's what motivates me in my personal life, in my relationships, in my business, in everything that I do. And as long as the work that I'm doing in my business can tie into that, which doesn't make sense to most people how that connection is, but I know where the connection is. As long as it feels connected, I feel aligned and I feel completely lit up and inspired by my business.
Interesting. Okay.
And I do usually find that people's whys, when they're getting deep enough, are rooted in their deep beliefs, whether it's religious or deep beliefs. Usually they are religious, but not always. Yeah. So it's crazy.
Well, okay. So I'll just share, but like, I've been diving into my why, and it's so funny. I'm so relieved that you say this, because I was like, I just feel like there's how is this connecting? But it's like, okay, hear me out. I think you're here for this, but like, I'm growing out my hair. I'm not dyeing it anymore. I'm letting it go gray. I'm trying to embrace like who I am and not trying to hide behind the unnatural. And I want other women to like embrace their imperfections and own who they are as an individual, and like feel like they can step out from behind the shadow and be confident in our quirkiness and our, and I'm like, well, what the heck does that have to do with quilting? So I'm relieved.
Exactly.
I'm relieved to hear that that's actually a good thing. Okay. Well, yay.
Yes. Yay. Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but there's power in your why, right? Like you're like, I don't know why I feel like this is the most important thing for me right now. But your why, when you're really connected to it and you're confident in it, confident enough, like, even though you're like, oh, it feels too personal to share and I'm being really vulnerable. But when you step into that, people are drawn to you. They're like, yes, I am overwhelmed by this constant need to upkeep the hair and to do the Botox and to do all the things to not show any sign of aging when I'm a human being and we all age. So it's like such a breath of fresh air for somebody to say, like, no, this is what I'm doing. And not only am I teaching this or talking about it, but I'm actually living it. And I'm doing the things. I'm done dyeing my hair. I'm done doing all these things that society has told me I need to keep doing to be acceptable. And I'm just going to be enough as myself. Well, do you know how many people are feeling the same overwhelm that you're feeling and they're going to be drawn to that? Like, it pulls people in. Even if you don't even talk about that ever, the fact that you're embracing it and you're getting comfortable and confident with it draws people to you. It's this incredible power and energy that we can only find when we're rooted in our why.
And I can see too, when I'm thinking about creating content, or if I can really draw on my deep why, it's very grounding. It's very like, no, don't worry about that. No, don't want to go there. You know, like, it's grounding.
It's like you're giving yourself permission to just be, to just be you, to just be. Like, stop feeling like you're not enough and living up to all these other things. When you focus back on that why, you're giving yourself permission. In fact, when I was closing my studio, one of my instructors called me, and I was like dreading that phone call because I knew I was going to have to tell her I'm shutting the studio down. And I was avoiding the topic with her. I was avoiding the conversation. I was trying to hide the level of overwhelm I was feeling. And she called me one day and she said, where are you at? Like, how are you doing? What's going on? And we had this conversation and she said, I feel like you just need permission to make the choice that you need to make. And she goes, I'm going to give you that permission. You do what you need to do. And it was so relieving for me. Like, it gave me the courage to make the choice and take the steps to actually move forward in shutting that down. And sometimes, like, that's what our why does for us. We get permission from ourselves to do what we need to do.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
There's so much power in it.
There is. Well, and so I'm curious for my listeners at this point, they're probably going to be like, oh, how can I work with Chantell? Like, what do you offer? What different things? How can people work with you?
Yeah. So my favorite is working with people in a one-on-one setting, because we do go deep into these why things. We're going to peel back the layers. We're going to get vulnerable. And that can feel a little bit harder to do in a group setting. I am introducing group coaching, and I'm excited about it because it will be a little bit more affordable, and I'll be able to help more entrepreneurs get to this level. But I'm also, a part of me is like, but I don't want to lose the beauty of that one-on-one where we can work together. You know, so I think the first thing is, like, identify how you learn best. Like, are you somebody that really holds things personal and close to you? Because I am, and I have done the group coaching. My first group coaching mastermind was, a small group. It was like 20 women, and they were relentless in getting us to be really open with this stuff. And I am not by nature somebody that's really open with these things. I'm getting better at it, but it was a very uncomfortable situation for me. In hindsight, I would have done much better with a one-on-one. So first of all, identify what you need. Like, can you open up in a group of safe women that are also opening up? They're all on the same journey as you. So we're all doing this together, and there's power in that. But if you know you can't, then one-on-one is probably the best for you. But what I offer at Strategy Square is either group or one-on-one coaching. It's exactly the same. We walk you through the same program. The advantage of the one-on-one is if you need to spend more time, if it's going to take you 12 weeks instead of 8, you have that ability. We have that flexibility to really go deep and connect on what you're needing. The group one, we stick to 8 weeks We do have some one-on-one breakaway meetings with me, but for the most part, we're kind of moving through the curriculum at a steady pace. Again, the group coaching is more affordable. One-on-one's a little bit more expensive, but there's a lot of value with that as well. But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, head to my website, which is strategysquare.co, not .com. And definitely there's an outline there. You can learn more about it. If you just want to even jump on a call with me, you can book a call there, just a free 30-minute call where we can kind of connect and see if that would be something that you could benefit from. All of that is available on my website. You can schedule that call or reach out and express your interest in the group or the one-on-one coaching.
That is so cool. Well, thank you. And are you on social media?
Yes. Strategy.square on Instagram is my main platform. I am on Facebook, but I hang out on Instagram. So that's where you can find me primarily. Staying true to what I teach is don't take on more than you can chew. So I've kind of just stuck to Instagram as my bread and butter, and there will be a time when I expand that. But for now, I'm sticking to Instagram. So
awesome. Well, this has been just really enjoyable and enlightening. So thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing. I've seen the impact you're having with one of my clients and helping her move towards her dreams and helping her live her life on her terms. And I think it's a really powerful work. And I'm so grateful that you're showing people how to do it.